Let's begin this morning with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, our beloved Gurudeva, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, great masters, help us to find the way to keep our consciousness uplifted so that it is your power, your love, your light that we experience and bring into this world. Help us to remember always that as we think, so we are, and to keep our thoughts and our energy always in tune with thee. Om, peace. Amen. Last week, I started speaking about soul consciousness, not ego consciousness. And as often happens, I felt not only was there a lot more to say, I never felt that I took the opportunity to really emphasize or deliver well the main point of that. Swamiji, in his book, Affirmations for Self-Healing, Swami Kriyananda, that is, calls one of the affirmations positive thinking. And he speaks very much to this point. It intrigues me that he simply calls it positive thinking. And I'd like to start with the affirmation today. We ended with it last week. But I'd like to start there today and talk about where this notion of positive thinking, if we receive that with just our minds, and how our minds would hold that notion, but where do we really end up in our consciousness if we were to be repeating this affirmation regularly? So first, let me read to you what Swami wrote about the concept of positive thinking before we do the affirmation together. He says, as we think, so we become. Just probably the most important line in this, or at least one of them. And as we think, so our lives and circumstances become also. From the divine consciousness comes answers to all of our questions and solutions to all of our problems. From the divine consciousness. It is in lower consciousness that confusion reigns. Think positively in everything you do, for in that way you help to attune yourself to the divine flow. One who is inwardly in tune with grace finds all things harmonious and beneficial being attracted to him. Positive thinking, combined with the sense of divine attunement, is never presumptuous, for it draws its power not from the ego, but from the consciousness of God's joy within. That is so beautiful to me. Positive thinking combined with divine attunement is never presumptuous, because when it's combined with attunement to the divine, it's never about us. We're not thinking our way to anything then. We're tuning in to an uplifted state of consciousness that is totally God's. This morning, I read when I first woke up, Jyotish and Devi, who are the spiritual directors of Ananda Worldwide, put out a weekly blog. It's beautiful. It's totally readable. You can read it in a minute. They very consciously made it this way, or a couple of minutes, so that it's not the next email that you get that you want to save for later, but you just become conditioned to know you can read it right then. And they're simple, but always very deep comments on something. And this morning, Devi wrote her blog. It's very beautiful. If you go to ananda.org, you can find it. I didn't bring it. I didn't even plan on commenting on it. But she was mentioning, as so many of us feel too, the state of all of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were talking only about the pandemic and the profound impact and effect that it was having throughout the world. Now we've added to that this, the way our thoughts and our consciousness are being drawn to what does it mean to live in a world and to try and see God equally in everyone. But so many people are suffering with the pain of it all, the sadness of it all, the violence of it all, that the question keeps coming up for so many of us and to so many of us, how can we hold all of this and keep our consciousness uplifted? So Devi addressed that so beautifully this morning. And there's a place where you can acknowledge to them and to whoever reads it, you can leave a comment. And I just said to her, thank you so much for helping us all to see the way to remember how to use our God-given power, not our own power, but God-given power to bring change into this world. I'm going to deviate for just a moment. I will come back to this sooner rather than later, so we get to feel Swami Kriyananda's consciousness here. But right before I came on, my dear friend Lakshmi was giving her weekly webinar. I don't know what she called it, but really she was addressing this same issue in her own way about what is needed now is not the force of the ego, the power of the ego, the way we would think with our minds that we need to approach. She was speaking about the situation in the world today, but implying every situation, but rather that we need to raise our consciousness, and that it's with the power of that totally transformed vibration of energy from ego to soul, from mind to infinite. That's what will bring about the change. And that's what we have to offer in the world right now. If we're trying to think, what can I do with this little self? And of course, there's a whole host of wonderful things for any cause that we believe in. When we bring our voice to it, it matters. When we volunteer in certain ways, it matters. When we donate money to whatever the cause is, it matters. When we step out and love people to the best of our ability, all of that matters. And the more that we can transform our consciousness before we do any of that, the more power all of that has, because it transforms from human power to God-given power. So, which is what Devi was talking about, which is what Lakshmi was talking about. And it's really exactly what Swami Kriyananda is talking about. So beyond positive thinking, because when we think of thinking, we think of human thoughts. That's why that first line, as we think, so we become. We have to watch our thoughts very carefully. And as long as we keep them at that level of the human, they're limited and they are so far from our true potential. And they're very often, as long as they are within that human realm, again, the realm of the ego, they're part of the problem. They can't help but be, because ego consciousness is problem-oriented, whereas soul consciousness, where Swamiji is trying to tell us to go, where Devi was leading the way, where Lakshmi was leading the way, soul consciousness is always solution-oriented. It's always in the direction of infinite possibility, of there always being a solution, a divine solution for every issue that we come up against. And we soon learn that that's the case. And the more of our own power, willingness, courage, willpower, not human will, not that kind of will that does this because you can feel it's contracted, but the divine counterpart of all of those qualities that I just mentioned. We have to bring that to really try and even change our thoughts. That's how we make the effort. And the joy of it is that the more effort we make, the more spiritual progress we make. As long as we're in this human condition, we are not going to run out of problems. We are not going to run out of what we would call opportunities to grow in that way. But what we need to remind ourselves is that it's always a conscious choice to do that. And we always have that choice. That is one thing that no situation could ever take away from us, is that choice to move towards expanded consciousness, towards an uplifted way of looking at this. I was so touched yesterday as I was watching a video of George, I'm blocking on his last name right now. Is that crazy? But the man who died a week ago, the African American who died. I've heard his name 1,000 times. But his brother was on the news, and his brother showed up at some of the demonstrations that were happening in the city where he lives. And he said, I love that you're all here. I love that I'm looking out and seeing souls of all different colors, of all different nationalities. He said, but I cannot condone even a minute of the violence. That's not who my brother was. That's not what he was bringing. We have to turn that violence, he said in his own words, this reading, we have to turn that. The human instinct may be totally understandable, but he said our job is to turn this into the love, the pure love that my brother represented. And he was speaking so beautifully because he spoke in a deeply spiritual way, as did the whole family, although they were in different places in the country, but in different moments. And really, they were all addressing these divine qualities, that's what we're all looking to become. And that even in the face of such pain, such deep and potentially consuming human pain, he was saying, we have to raise this, again, not his words, but into a different realm. He was breaking down and sobbing in moments. He loved his brother. He's going to miss his brother. He loved the love and the joy and the positive thinking that his brother brought into the world. So it wasn't as if he was trying to suppress his human grief. We can't do that. Positive thinking is not about suppression. It's about expansion. It's about transformation. That's what's in this affirmation. And that's what so many people are speaking to these days. It's actually, in many ways, a beautiful moment filled with all of the potential of the divine to transform human consciousness. But we have to choose to do that. I'm going to go from the divine to the mundane for a moment. I live in two separate homes. I live in the Ananda community, about half time, and I spend half of my time with my partner, who has a beautiful home about 15 minutes away that was consciously chosen because it's on an isolated street with 4 homes surrounded by all of Stanford land, Stanford-owned land. So when you look out from his house, you see trees and a creek and hills. You do not see a lot of other people. You do not hear any noise other than natural sounds of nature. The house next door to him, which is just a little ways away, sold a few weeks ago. And we know nothing about who bought it, or we don't know who these people are, but suddenly all of this heavy equipment started coming in about 3-4 days ago. Jackhammers and men big enough to manage those jackhammers. I mean, digging and pounding of concrete and of everything from morning till night. And it's been rather warm here in Palo Alto. So when one cannot open the windows right now because there's jackhammers outside of your windows and it's 100 degrees outside and inside, it can get your emotions going. So this morning, as I was leaving to come here, Barry was totally understandably, in a certain way, saying to me, today's just going to be miserable. It's just going to be unbearable. It's going to be all this noise. They go for 8 straight hours. It's going to be hot. He was just recounting the physical reality of his day. And I said to him, honey, guess what I'm just leaving to give a talk on? And he said, what? And I said, the power of positive thinking. He sort of rolled his eyes, but I said to him, I'm just going to leave this book open to this affirmation. See if it can help you. Because it can. They're transforming. They are completely. And in just a moment, that transformation that happens when we go from the limited power of our ego to the infinite power of our soul that is in every moment in time available to us. The affirmation that goes with this, with the affirmation that Swamiji wrote to help us move from ego consciousness to soul consciousness. Let's just say it together twice. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts, which says, as we think, so we become. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts. Filled with the joy of God, I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. Filled with the joy of God, I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts. Filled with the joy of God, I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. Just, we open this book to that page and we say, anything that I can do to fill myself with the joy of God, which will happen if we repeat this affirmation, then everything we do expresses that God-given power, that God-given joy, that God-given love. Every one of those divine qualities has the power within it immediately to help us transform. We use it for small things. When there's a jackhammer outside, we use it for huge things. When we're looking at how are we being called upon to live this life that allows us to see that the divine exists, lives in, is manifested in, truly manifested in every soul on this planet. Now that's big, and it is perfectly doable by a simple change of a thought. Our thoughts are energy. And energy is what is manifested in this whole world. So as we think, we become, and as we think, we have the power to send ripples of God's consciousness out into this world. Look at the difference in watching, if you watch even a tidbit of news, which I bet almost everyone does, when there's violence out there, when there's anger, when there's rage, I'm not judging it. I'm really not. But feel the difference of what happens in you. And then jump forward 10 minutes when the news people are saying to us, but you know, most of the demonstrations today were peaceful. Most of those people were looking for unity. They were looking to find the good in all. They were looking to awaken a different consciousness. Listen to the words of so many of the people who were speaking, including the family of this man. Under such duress in the world, look at what's happening when we change our minds. It's beautiful. And we have it every moment, under every circumstance, because conditions are always neutral. What we bring to them, what thoughts we bring, the way we choose to see them is exactly what makes them real. So we could look at these tragic moments, the pandemic and all of the losses that people are going through, the attitudes of so many people in the world that bring so much injustice in so many ways. Look at what's happening. And yet we can say that we have the perfect opportunity in front of us to change this world into a world of perfect truth, perfect love, perfect harmony, perfect peace of mind. Because the bigger the challenge and the more we need to raise our energy, and the sooner we do it, which means right in the midst of the most challenging moments, not to wait, for 2 weeks after when we've calmed down. And no, the sooner we can say, this is so hard right now, in every individual moment in your life, for Barry to be able to say to himself, you know, I'm hoping something beautiful is being created out there. I'm hoping these neighbors move in and feel all of the peace and the beauty and the expansiveness of this little corner of the world, the way I feel it. And I'm just going to sit with what's being created out there. Is that hard? Of course it's hard. I wasn't saying to him it's easy. It's so minor compared to everything else, but it's still not easy. It's still hot and you're still closed in and it's still pounding and you get a headache. It's hard. This is why Sister Gianna Matta said, our religion is lived in the cold, hard light of day. So when the jackhammer's pounding, that's when these changes can happen, because it just gets more and more and more challenging as we reach the pinnacle of our spiritual path, as we move closer and closer to the goal. But then we remember, you know what? I was able to actually get to a place where that jackhammer didn't bother me. I was actually able to transcend all of those little challenging moments right in the moment. I have that within me. And this only looks more challenging. This somebody coming in and hurting my heart, or doing an act of violence against somebody that I love so much, that I was not ready to lose. But I know how to transcend that. I know how to transform it. That's what we're doing with the power of positive thinking. And Swamiji says, and he ends this affirmation, problems cannot exist, Lord, whenever thou art near. Means when I am open to your love, when I am living, manifesting your love, there are no problems. And that is the truth. Give me strength always to hold thee in my heart. When we're living in terms of our divine qualities, our soul consciousness, problems cannot exist. Doesn't mean they don't exist somewhere else, but they don't exist within us. Now just imagine for a moment. I was just reminded of John Lennon and where his song Imagine. I don't have time to go over the words, but look it up and listen. He knew this then. He knew it in the 60s and the 70s. Imagine a world where every soul knew this prayer. Problems cannot exist, Lord, whenever thou art near. Give me strength always to hold thee in my heart. Let's all hold that prayer every day, along with the prayer that every soul on this planet can find their way to that same solution in pure soul consciousness.